Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A jam-packed show this morning, I have to say. We're taking a look at some of the key moments from President Biden's big sit-down with Jake Tapper, specifically with regards to nuclear war, the thing that we will probably be leading our show with for quite a while now, unfortunately. He also made some interesting comments about the possibility for a recession, I think for the first time acknowledging that there is a risk of a recession. They've really been trying to tamp down any talk of that, but I think the writing is on the wall. It's kind of undeniable at this point. Also, a very interesting moment in an NBC News sit-down with John Fetterman. Of course, he's the Democratic nominee for Senate in the state of Pennsylvania, and he had suffered a stroke, and he hasn't really been in front of the cameras all that much. This was one of his first big television news sit-downs, and there was a real freak out over the way that this was conducted. We'll show you the controversial moment, see what you guys think about it. We'll tell you what we think about it. It's interesting, let's just say that. And then, speaking of interesting, Kanye West, new developments there. And the part, this isn't the sort of thing we normally would cover in a way.
Right.
The musings of basically someone who needs to be on medication. But there was interesting revelations about what was left out of his interview with Tucker Carlson, which I think says a lot about the cable news propaganda machine. So we'll get into all of that. We also have Congressman Ro Khanna. He's going to be coming in studio to talk about ways that he thinks the administration should reset and totally change their relationship with Saudi Arabia in light of everything that has happened there. So we're going to get to that as well.
So obviously, the top of mind for all of us, nuclear war. What are the developments with regards to Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and its posture? President Biden sitting for an interview with CNN's Jake Tapper, making some news. Let's take a listen.
How realistic is it, do you think, that Putin would use a tactical nuclear weapon?
Well, I don't think he will, but I think it's irresponsible for him to talk about it. The idea that a world leader, one of the largest nuclear powers in the world, says he may use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, and the whole point I was making was it could lead to just a horrible outcome. And not because anybody intends to turn it into a world war or anything, but it just, once you use a nuclear weapon, the mistakes that can be made, the miscalculations, who knows what would happen.
What is the red line for the United States and NATO, and have you directed the Pentagon and other agencies to game out what a response would be if he did use a tactical nuclear weapon, or if he bombed the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, or anything along those lines?
There's been discussions on that, but I'm not going to get into that. It would be irresponsible for me to talk about what we would or wouldn't do.
Have you asked the Pentagon to game it out, though? I mean, just in case?
The Pentagon didn't have to be asked.
Do you think Putin is a rational actor?
I think he is a rational actor who's miscalculated significantly. I think he thought, you may recall, I pointed out that they were going to invade, that all those 100,000 or more troops there, and no one believed that he was going to invade Ukraine. You listen to what he says. If you listen to the speech he made after, when that decision was being made, he talked about the whole idea of he was needed to be the leader of Russia that united all the Russian speakers. I mean, I just think it's irrational.
So if he's not rational, and
no, I didn't say he's not rational.
You said the speech is what?
I think the speech is
okay.
His objectives were not. I think he thought, Jake. I think he thought he was going to be welcomed with open arms. That this has been the home of Mother Russia in Kyiv, and he was going to be welcomed. And I think he just totally miscalculated.
Two noteworthy things out of that. One is the obvious, that if there's a war game going on as to how exactly to respond. Number two, though, to me, was Biden's insight into Putin's state of mind, which is frankly probably the most important thing.
Yeah,
because these two men are the only ones who get to decide whether we're going to go into a nuclear war or not. And his answer is really revealing and actually shows us exactly why this is terrifying, which is, well, he's rational, but maybe he's not rational, because invading was pretty irrational. And even though you can see how an irrational mind got there, it was still a pretty dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you miscalculated once, who's to say that you won't miscalculate again? History does not tell us that people who have the hubris, autocratic power that Putin does often are like, you know what? I've learned from a mistake.
Right.
I'm just going to chill back and not escalate this time around.
Well, I think I actually liked Biden's answer here because it gives you a peek into a sort of behind the scenes raging debate that's going on here in Washington. The media and a lot of elite Democrats in particular have been portraying Putin as this like stark, mad, raving lunatic type of figure who, you know, if your assumption is this is a crazy person who is wildly irrational, well, it kind of absolves you of doing anything to try to bring the situation to a close. So I appreciated that Biden clearly, when Jake Tapper said, oh, so he's irrational, he really clearly wanted to make it known that, no, I see this as a rational actor who had irrational objectives. And also, I think the key part was really miscalculated the situation. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that could be. I mean, when you are an autocrat who surrounds yourself with a bunch of yes men, then they're going to tell you what you want to hear about your military's readiness and the chances of success and the way you're going to be greeted with open arms like a hero by the Ukrainians so that you can keep your, position close to the king, as it would be. And so it sort of makes more sense to imagine that he was really dramatically misled, dramatically miscalculated, and now is backed into this corner where, when anyone is backed into a corner where they feel their life, their power, their all the things they care about are at risk, then people start behaving in these erratic ways. That's why there's this concept in foreign policy of gambling for resurrection. That's not because he's a crazy person. It's because he sees himself to be really backed into a corner right now. And that's a sort of situation from the beginning we've been saying you've got to try to avoid. So I appreciated that he's made it very clear. His view in that debate over whether Putin is crazy or not is no, this is a rational actor. Well, then that puts the onus on you in part to try to, predict what this rational actor might do in light of the circumstances and try to avoid World War III and a nuclear exchange.
Rational and rationality are always, just very difficult concepts to grapple with. I actually think Dan Carlin has done a fantastic job of this. He has an entire series on the bomb where he calls it logical insanity. Like the logical insanity of, war is insane. And so, firebombing of Tokyo, if I were to describe to you the exact circumstances of how 100,000 people were burned in one night, you'd be like, that's the most insane thing I ever heard. And then if I were to tell you the exact logical sequence through which the U.S. Air Force or U.S. Army Air Corps arrived at the way that they decided to carry that, you're like, of course that makes sense.
Yes.
So you have to put that in the context of the nuclear bomb and also why the gambling for resurrection. Of course it would make sense in the context of all human history and warfare. You have to update then the consequences of said weapon. And Krystal, one of the reasons I got into this business, one of the reasons I'm sitting here with you is because one of the things I always hated about the press corps and the mainstream press was they never actually just dug deep into the details. And, the Pentagon is where I started out. And Biden gave a speech yesterday about the national security strategy and all of that. And all the reporters did was just quote from his speech in the fact check. I decided to just go read the thing. And inside of it is a very important line inserted yesterday, October 12th, when it was published. Let's put this up there on the screen. I'm going to read this for you directly in terms of how the Biden administration officially in the canonized national security strategy has written.
Which is something that is required for them to deliver. It's congressionally mandated.
Right. It's required by law. Every administration has to publish it in the first 2 years. So here's what he says, quote, "The United States will not allow Russia or any power to achieve its objectives through using or threatening to use nuclear weapons." Now, the reason why I think that matters is it's spilling it out in pretty unambiguous terms that there will be a response that is very different from where we are right now. And if you combine it with some past comments, both by President Biden there and also previously about how there is no such thing as a tactical nuclear weapon, I think we can all just readily acknowledge that we are in a world war if this is going to happen.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.